My name is Michael. My wife and I have just returned from a 16-day Dory trip down the Colorado River from Lake Powell to Lake Mead. We did this with Grand Canyon Expeditions. They are one of just a couple of outfitters in the canyon that run Dory trips. And I wanted to just offer some advice and information that I thought would be helpful to you, that would have been helpful to me had I known about it. I mean, they will give you obviously an information sheet and a packing list. They are a great outfitter and I would highly recommend them if you're considering a trip like this. I want to talk a little bit about also the types of boats that you could consider. It was something we considered, my wife and I. I'm 65, my wife is in her late 50s. We are not experienced campers. But after seeing the Grand Canyon a little over a decade ago from the South Rim, I realized it was probably one of the most astounding things on our planet to see. And I always had wanted to go back. So it became like a bucket list item, which I think it is for a lot of people. The average age of the people in our group was probably 65-ish to 70, I would say. There were 19 people in our group out of a maximum of 20. There are 5 dories. There were 5 dories, 5 guides, and 2 support staff who man the gigantic inflatable raft that brings all the supplies along the route that you will travel. So there are different types of boats. Some go faster, some go slower. The dories are not fast typically. I think our route was more or less 260 miles. We had plenty of time to explore. It's very peaceful, it's quiet. The dories are fantastic boats. And they are expertly guided by these gentlemen who specialize in this kind of work. They're amazing people, absolutely amazing people with amazing stories. They have been all over the world, these guys. They've spent their lives doing river exploration. They had a lot of great information to impart to us about the geology, the history of the Indians in the canyon, the people who saved the canyon, the gentleman from the Sierra Club who saved the canyon from multiple attempts to dam it. Anyway, so you have inflatable rafts and you have the dories. The dories are 16 to 17 feet long. They're like sort of double-ended, high in the bow, high in the stern. 2 people sit in the front, 2 people sit in the back. The people in the front will tend to get wetter than the ones in the back. The guide sits in the middle, often oaring forward, downriver. When the wind becomes particularly strong, they turn the boat around and they row in the more traditional way. And you do have an opportunity to row the boats. If they ask you if you'd like to row, I would recommend it. It's quite interesting, it's challenging, and it gives you a deep appreciation for what these guys can do. So anyway, when we were planning this trip a few years ago, I decided the dories were the way to go. I did not want to be subjected to the sound of an engine all day long. I felt like the canyon was something that deserved time and patience to explore. I felt like this might be a trip I would only do once in my life, and I wanted to experience it in the most peaceful way possible. So you can get inflatable boats that are rowed. That would be probably the second best option for someone like myself. Of course, there are motorized options that go all different speeds. I think you could conceivably do the canyon in 8 days, top to bottom, if you chose to. Most of the trips are divided into upper and lower canyon. Some people just do the upper and they get out at Phantom Ranch. Some people get in at Phantom Ranch and go and do the lower. I can't really advise you on if you're going to do half the canyon, which is better. I did feel like for me, seeing it for the first time, the first half was quite awe-inspiring. And that may just have been because it was my first time seeing all of it. There were people in our group that had been down the canyon multiple times. One woman in our group had been down the river 5 times. So that just gives you a sense of how magnetic the canyon is. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit. So that's some information about the dories. The dories, I will say this. There's a hatch in the front of the dory and a hatch in the back. And this is where you keep your supplies that you're going to use during the day dry bag that the Grand Canyon expeditions will give you. And you keep things in there that you might want to use during the day. Obviously, snacks, different types of clothing, hats, parkas, whatever you think you might need. You stow those in the hatches. The hatches are pretty watertight, so if for some reason the boat would flip, your stuff would be relatively dry. In the big rapids, I would take my iPhone and put it in one of my bags in the hold in the front of the back. Just in case the boat did flip. I thought most of the time I carried my iPhone in my jacket. I took a waterproof jacket. This one happens to be, I think, from LL Bean. It's quite good. Had a nice pocket here. I would keep my cell phone in here during the day. A lot of people had the plastic cases for the cell phones to protect them. I found that to be a little difficult to use. My wife had one, and she pretty much relied on my photos because I think she found it a little bit challenging to use that. I would recommend a lanyard for your phone if you're going to bring a phone. I had an iPhone 17, takes great pictures. During the day, I would keep it mostly in this pocket under my life jacket. The life jackets are quite snug and very buoyant. And it was easy enough for me to take it out as needed and take photos, which I did quite a bit because there's a lot of beautiful things to take photos of. So, the dories. Yes, they are amazing boats, amazingly captained by these guides. And as I said, they can turn over. You're given a lot of information about what you should do if they do turn over. They're fairly easy to get back upright. You don't need to be too concerned about that. We did not flip a dory on our trip, but it does happen. And you shouldn't lose any sleep over it. I jumped in one of the rapids at the suggestion of one of our guides one day, and that really cured me of the fear of getting in the water or going down a rapid, outside the boat. There's a technique to it. You keep your butt elevated. The life jacket keeps you very buoyant. Your feet are downstream. You should be wearing your shoes, whatever you have on in the boat. But you can just go down the rapids, and it's quite exciting. The water is cold, about 65 degrees. And that's probably the most unpleasant part. Otherwise, it's quite thrilling, and a lot of the rapids are quite large. The guides, however, will recon some of the larger rapids. You will stop above the rapids and they will walk and look at what is happening with those rapids on that particular day, depending on the water level in the river. The water levels do change quite a bit, depending on what they release from the Glen Powell Dam. It only happened once during our trip that we had to be concerned about a water level where we had to get out of camp pretty early in the morning to get through this one rapid. Because as the water level diminishes, you can imagine the rocks become more exposed, the rapids become more dangerous for certain types of boats, the dories in particular, not so much the inflatables. Anyway, so they will recon these rapids. Some of the rapids we walked around because they were actually too dangerous, and they took the boats without passengers. Your safety is really important. And you get a lot of good information about how to be safe on the river. It's an interesting experience to be in the dories. It's very much a group effort. The dories are nimble. They react quite easily to weight distribution. So where you put the weight in the boat is essential when you're going through these big rapids. You go forward into the waves. If the boat often enters the rapids sideways. There's something called high siding, where you kind of want to move to the high side of the boat to keep the boat trim. But everyone works together with the guide. and the guides give you very good instructions. There are bailing buckets in the front and the back, 2 in the front and 2 in the back for each of those passengers. Oftentimes you might be instructed to bail in the midst of a rapid if the rapids are particularly big, because when the boat fills with water, and it will fill with water, it often happens that the water comes over the boat and you are actually sitting in the water. And when the guide instructs you, you bail, and you bail quickly, because the boat is not as maneuverable when it's filled with water. But like I said, there are hatches everywhere. Everything is in the hatches. In the particularly big rapids, everything is put away. And you all prepare to go through these rapids. Anyway, it's thrilling, it's exciting, it brings you close together as a group. You know, it's not for everyone, but it's thrilling. So that's the Dory idea. The inflatables are actually much easier, nothing really to worry about. I don't think that they rarely flip. So let's go on to the idea of the gear that you're going to need. Like I said, Grand Canyon Expeditions, or whatever outfit you choose, will give you a list of things. The first thing that I think is most concerning to people is the bathroom. There is something called a groover, so named because in the old days, people would poop in these metal boxes that had grooves on the sides where you would sit, and so those would leave grooves in your butt. Those no longer exist, but it is a fairly large metal box with a conventional toilet on the top. There's a separate toilet for peeing. It is advised that you do not pee in the groover because this creates an unpleasant odor. The groover does not really smell, honestly. And so there are, in our group, 19 people with 7 support staff. So 26 people for one groover. The groovers are placed to the left or the right of the camps each night when you set up. They are in incredibly beautiful areas generally. They're completely private. No one is near you. You can do your business in peace. It's actually quite dramatic and amazing. You just need to be efficient with going to the bathroom. There's rarely a line of more than a few people. Most of the time, no people. So I don't think you should be too nervous about that. My wife was very nervous and she didn't go to the bathroom for the first few days. But anyway, she finally got things going. And it does work. That's all I'm going to say. From the time that you wake up in the morning, which is at daybreak, the guides prepare coffee and they blow the conch, and everyone is awake at that point generally, and people come down and get coffee or tea. And then maybe 20 minutes to a half hour later, breakfast is ready. There are big tables. They set everything out in a buffet style. There's always fresh fruit. There might be eggs, bacon, omelets, oatmeal. The food is quite good at every meal. Lunches were generally sandwiches or wraps, kind of making your own. And in the evening, the dinners would be prepared by the guides on a rotating basis. And the food was terrific. Really, we had a lot of fresh vegetables, a lot of salad, grilled steaks, salmon, chicken, curries, you name it. The menu was really fantastic, I would have to say. And these guides work like dogs. They are up generally before sunrise. They, like I said, they prepare the breakfast, they clean up, they break down camp, they set up camp, they cook the dinners. And you might think that a 10% tip after the expense of a trip like this is kind of exorbitant, but I'll tell you this, it's not nearly enough. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents about that. Okay, so the toilet, like I said, you have the groover, which you go to the bathroom in, and you need to be efficient. As far as peeing is concerned, you should not pee in the wilderness. It's not advised. There are blue buckets that are given to every camper that you pee in at night or during the day. Most of us just peed in the river, men and women separately ideally, but not always. That's not always possible. I brought this little pee device, which was fantastic, not very expensive. The top does glow in the dark in the tent. I found that really useful. My wife ended up using this a lot, and she found it really helpful during the day. In the boats, in the dories, it's not easy to pee off the edge of a dory because the edges are slanted outwards in this fashion. Even for the men, we would often pee in the bailing buckets because those are watertight and available. The boats will pull over for the women to pee during the day, and that did happen, but it's much more efficient to pee in the boat. So having something like this is very helpful at night. What we would do is we would have this in the tent. We would be able to see the top because it glows in the dark. We had our little blue buckets just outside the entrance to the tent, and we would pee in this, my wife, both she and I, and we would then dump it into the blue buckets, and it would be empty most of the time for us to use. So found that very handy. So the other thing to be concerned about is moisturizing, dehydration, and all of that. Dehydration is a real concern. When you get to Las Vegas, Grand Canyon Expeditions does have a shop there, and they offer lots of interesting and valuable products, one of which is a water bottle, which we used. We bought a couple of these. They were great. Of course, we brought our own water bottles, but we found these really great. They also sell different types of moisturizers. This one called Super Salve by the Pure Herbal Comfort. My wife said this was terrific for hands. They also sell a Comfrey Leaf hand and body lotion. Terrific, both of them. But bring moisturizer, and bring plenty of it, and use it a lot. And I'm saying that because the Park Service requires that these outfitters provide ways to sanitize your hands. And what it is it's water with bleach in it. And there is a foot pump. You pump the water with your foot, the water comes out of this little tube, and you wash your hands in this bleach water. Of course, there's soap as well. But if you don't rinse the bleach water off in the river, it will ruin your skin very, very quickly. I was not aware of this, and my hands were practically bleeding after a few days. My wife would put the salve on my hands at night, and I actually wore gloves at night for a few days until my hands could recover. But you need to be very, very careful about using this bleach water. We all used it before every meal and after the bathroom, of course. So you're using it a lot, and you need to make sure you get it off of your hands once you put it on there, because it will eat your skin. Another thing too, one other thing, the Grand Canyon Expeditions will give you a cup like this, which is fantastic. We all use them. You put your name on it, little magic marker, screws off, you can steal it. Great for your coffee, your tea at night, your bourbon, your whiskey, or whatever drinks, your wine you might want to drink. It's great. Obviously it can't break. We kept these handy all the time. I wish we had brought them, but we didn't need to bring them because they were given to us, and they are fantastic. Another thing about going back to cell phones, there is no cell phone service in the canyon. Intermittently, there is reception here and there, but do not use your cell phone. Do not try to make calls. Some of the guides did use satellite service when it was available to text their loved ones, but no one else in the trip tried to use their cell phones to connect with anyone. We all just use our phones to take pictures, which brings up another issue, which is how are you going to charge your phone? Well, I bought this solar charger. Most people had solar chargers of one sort or another. This one's called a Big Blue, 28 watts. Very easy to use. I kept it in my day bag. I had another bag like this. This is a Camelback bag that I brought along with me, which I normally use for cycling, but it has all kinds of great pockets. I kept my solar charger in here during the day, in the hold, in the front, or the back, depending on where I was. And during lunchtime, it was mostly always sunny. There's plenty of sun in the canyon. You just simply undo it. I would lay it out in the dory, flat on the dory, plug it in. My wife would charge her phone, and I would charge some other people's phones if they didn't have a good charger. I found this one particularly good, but there are many other brands. I think this one, however, is excellent. Another thing to consider, hats. Protection from the sun is essential. I bought this sort of inexpensive hat from REI, which has a nice chin strap. You will need that. It can be quite windy in the canyon, so it's easy to lose hats if they're not secure. When on hotter days, dunking this in the river and putting it on your head is also great. You can take the sponges that are in the boats, in the dories. You can wet those and put those on your skin or on your shirts or your pants or whatever you're wearing. Like I said, we went down the canyon April 16th for 16 days. It was the second week that the canyon was open. We wanted to go early in the season. It was suggested to us by Grand Canyon Expeditions that this would be a good time, and it was in fact an excellent time. Even though there were nights when it was in the upper 40s, we had sleeping bags. The company supplies the sleeping bags. They supply cots. We had a 2-man tent. Tents are provided. Not everyone used tents. You don't have to use tents. Many people just slept out. There were one night when it rained slightly off and on, and people would just wrap themselves in a tarpaulin, and they seemed quite happy. We were in our tent. It does have a water covering for the tent. The 2 cots that you're given elevate you about 2.5 feet off of the ground. That's really nice. And there also is a liner that goes on the cot. You have a sleeping bag and a like polar fleece liner that goes in the sleeping bag. So you bring an inflatable pillow, or you can just roll up some clothing to use as a pillow. We found all of that quite nice. The one thing that I will say is that where you camp, it's very sandy. These are big sandy expanses along the side of the river where there are low trees, tamarisk, mesquite trees of one sort or another, occasionally rocks that you can put your cots or your tent on, but those are few and far between. Mostly you're on the sand, and this sand is extremely fine and powdery, and it goes everywhere. Cutting a small little mat, one of the guides had taken literally one of those little plastic doormats and cut a small piece of it, and he used that to get in and out of his dory. The guides sleep in the dories. But to get in and out, if you're having a tent, using that to keep the sand out of your tent is actually kind of nice. Or even inside the tent before you get in your sleeping bag, if you're going to use a sleeping bag. For most of you, if you're going anytime after May, I would say it's going to be warm enough that you will barely need a sleeping bag. It will be hot, in fact, and the sand where you camp will be extremely hot. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to have some kind of shoes to wear. Most of the guys actually just wear flip-flops. I think flip-flops could be fine as long as they're fairly robust. In terms of shoes, because we were leaving at the early part of the season, or if you're going in the fall when it's cooler, I bought these inexpensive little North Face slippers. These turned out to be great. You could just slip into them, or if you wanted the heel, you could use that, and that would keep the sand out. My wife walked around these a lot. She kind of took them from me very quickly. The other shoes that most people seem to wear are Keens or Chakas or a shoe like this. These are useful. They have some caveats, however. The slits allow the sun to come through. My feet did get burned from the sun. That's something to consider. So you might also want to have a pair of maybe neoprene booties that you would wear in these to keep the sun off of your feet. Also, it's kind of nice when you're hiking with these because little sand and pebbles will get in them. So having a neoprene sock is kind of nice. And if it's hot, I imagine that would keep your feet cool. These are quite useful. Some people said perhaps the Chakas might be a little bit better made. These were great for me, but they were brand new when I took them, so nothing happened. My wife had a pair of Keens and they separated, but one of the guides was great enough to fix them. A pair of sneakers is actually kind of handy. These are special sneakers that I bought from a company called Lowa, L-O-W-A. I used these with my bare feet because my wool socks were a little too large and they were a little uncomfortable with the wool socks, but these turned out to be great for hiking through water or just sometimes in camp when there are these little prickly things that it can be in the sand. I walked around often barefoot. Some of the campers suggested that I not do that, but I didn't find it to be much of a problem. But if it's hot, you're not going to walk around in bare feet. You will burn your feet in that sand. Gloves. I would recommend that you bring gloves, and I would advise that you use the gloves to set up and break down your tent. You will be setting up your own tent. If you have a tent, you'll be setting up your own little camp wherever you choose to be. You can be completely private and away from everyone if that's what you want. You have to walk a little farther to get to the food in the evening, but some people chose to do that. We brought neoprene gloves. These are called Glacier Outdoors. Mine actually I used them so much that I actually ruined them during the course of the trip, but I did find them very useful for setting up and breaking down, and being in the water. They're great. But I brought a second pair of gloves because my hands would get cold sometimes. I would say, if you're want to protect your hands from the sun, bring some gloves. You'll use them. As for socks, if you're going during the cooler months, the socks that everybody was using are these Darn Toughs, and they're fantastic. One other thing, splash pants. They talk about splash pants. I think in the summer months, you could get by with just some bathing trunks. A lot of the guides just wore some trunks like this, bare legs. Often they were barefoot, or they just had their flip-flops in the hold where their feet would be. That works great with a waterproof top. Which brings me to another issue, the issue of dry suits. Should you or should you not rent a dry suit or buy a dry suit? We were very concerned. We're from Miami. We did not want to be cold and wet. There were a couple of days when we were cold and wet. It couldn't be helped. You get wet in the rapids, the bigger rapids, you will get wet. But it's dry and you will dry off quickly. And in the summer, you will dry off very quickly. So actually getting wet will be a blessing. But a good waterproof jacket like the one I suggested and a waterproof pair of pants would be fine. I don't think the dry suit was entirely necessary. I wore mine maybe 5 or 6 times over the 16 days. My wife's dry suit was very uncomfortable because it has rubber gaskets around the ankles, the throat, and the wrist to keep the water out, obviously. And those gaskets can be quite tight. And anyway, she found it uncomfortable enough not to use it, and she was fine with just what she brought as a pants and a top. And in the colder months also, a little puffer jacket. These are fantastic, not too expensive, and you can get them quite small. They don't take up a lot of space. We definitely use those on the colder nights. What else? Let's see. Gloves, bleach water, moisturizer. The solar charger. Okay. Let's see. Talking. So, one thing I think you should think about if you decide to do one of these trips, and I would highly recommend that you do it if you are interested in the Grand Canyon, is the whole issue of talking in the boats, because it's quiet on the river with the dories in particular, or if you're in a paddle inflatable boat. I think it's nice to have long periods where nobody is speaking. Of course, we're all getting to know each other. We didn't know any people on this trip, and you get to know your fellow travelers quite a lot. But there are always some people who talk a bit too much, and I felt like there were times when it would be nice to have a little silence. And there's more and more silence as time goes on, because you learn, you've gotten most of the basics out of the way with each person. One other thing that does happen is that you rotate in the dories. Every day you would switch guides, switch groups of people, and that makes it interesting because you get to know each guide, get to know all the people in your group. And after a week or so, you figure out the people that you enjoy spending more time with. Everybody on our trip was great, to be honest with you, and it's extremely educational. These guides, many of them have been going down this river for 50 years, and they know a lot, and they've seen a lot. They'll tell you about the history, the Indian tribes that have lived in the canyon. They'll tell you about the early explorers. They'll tell you all about the geology, more than you ever wanted to know. And it is absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of hiking also. Most of the people in our group, despite their ages, could manage these hikes. You just go slowly. Some people chose not to go on certain hikes. But these side canyons are magnificent and beautiful. And I think if you have the physical capability, you should do as many of them as you can, because they are remarkable, spectacular. The whole experience is actually, it's absolutely spectacular. I can't recommend it enough. I'm so happy that we did it. It was worth all the money that we paid and more. And what else? I think I've just about covered it. Oh, the packs. So when you go on this trip, whichever outfitter you choose, you'll be given a dry bag. Okay, you get a larger dry bag, it's about yay big, and a smaller one for the day. In the larger pack, you put all the clothes that you brought, and it's a really great idea to organize those clothes and everything. Put your toiletries in one Ziploc bag and label it. Put your underwear in another Ziploc bag and label it. Put your pants, your shoe, whatever it is. Keep everything separated by category, because when you're trying to reach into that bag, deep into that bag and find something, it's very difficult to do. But having everything in a bag makes it easy to pull one bag out and another bag. There were things that I brought that ended up in the bottom of my bag that I never saw after about 5 days. And I ended up wearing basically the same couple of outfits all the time. I didn't feel the need to be doing laundry. You're getting wet every day. If you feel the need to wash your hair or bathe, you can just go down to the river. Yes, it's cold, but you can soap up and clean yourself, and it's quite refreshing. And it was sunny most of the days, like I said. We only had one day with a tiny bit of rain. There were some overcast days, some windy days. But if you are susceptible to heat, I would not advise that you go in June. They say that July and August are rainy times when it does rain more frequently, which I suppose is fine, but it's going to be over 100 degrees down in the canyon. So my personal preference would be April or September, but that's totally up to you. And I think that about covers it. Let me make sure there's nothing that I've left out. Oh, drink bags. Okay, so they do not supply alcoholic beverages. Most people brought wine and spirits, beer. One gentleman brought 6 or more cases of beer. You can bring as much as you like. They will stop in a Walmart on the way to Lake Powell in the morning of your departure. You cannot buy hard liquor there. You can buy beer. But you should label all of it. There are 2 mesh sacks that go on the supply boat. One is for the general group. Anyone can access whatever's in there. And they do bring, different types of sodas. The La Croix and the bubbly waters seem to go a lot pretty quickly. So if you want those, I would bring plenty and I would label them. Put your initials on the top and keep that in the private bag, which is where everybody kept their beer and other sodas that they didn't, that they wanted to hold on to. Most people are very generous. If they have extra drinks, they will happily share them with you. After, you try to set up the camp with a couple of hours of daylight left so the guides can make dinner and you can eat while it's still light. The other thing that's important to remember is there are no napkins and there are no tables. So bring a little washcloth of some kind that you can use as a napkin and you could rinse it off in the river. I was desperate for a napkin and never had one. And it's a little hard to eat a steak sitting in a little collapsible canvas chair with your plate on your lap and trying to cut a steak. So you could actually think of bringing something hard, like the size of a small tray that would fit a plate, maybe even a glass or a cup and some silverware. I think that would be quite handy. If I did this trip again, I would bring something like that. Most of the guides would eat standing up. Anyway, that's another thing to be concerned about. And I think that's pretty much it. Yes. That's it. Anyway, I hope this was informative. And seriously consider doing this trip. And seriously consider the dories. I think it is the way to go. And if you can't manage a dory, then go in an inflatable that's paddled. Do not go with, my own personal feeling, do not go in a motorized boat. I just think that destroys the experience of this really beautiful, beautiful place. Okay, have fun.